The speeches of God in chapters 38 through 41 actually do not answer the question of why the righteous suffer, nor do they defend the justice of God. They are instead designed to bring Job to where he can, without sacrificing his integrity, withdraw his suit against God, and in doing so, also remain loyal to God. The story of Job's trials starts with a question: is it for nothing that Job fears God? The wisdom poem in chapter 28 picks up on this theme. After exploring the possible dwelling places of wisdom and not finding her, the poem concludes that God knows the place of wisdom, and behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to turn from evil is understanding. After the claims of knowledge by Job and the friends, the poem foreshadows Yahweh's speeches and Job's replies, and reminds us of what is at stake. Job has passed two tests, but if he is the man Yahweh had claimed, he must continue to hold the same attitude despite his continued suffering and the attitude of his friends. The Yahweh speeches do not tell Job what his choice must be. The first speech, however, removes knowledge as the basis of that choice and confronts Job with the one who is assumed to know, Yahweh. It enacts what chapter 29 proclaims: wisdom is not to be found by humankind. It is known by God, who declares that for humans, wisdom is to fear God and turn from evil. Job is left to choose the only true wisdom without knowledge, without blessing, without honor, and without vindication. Yahweh does not answer the question, why do the righteous suffer, because that is not really the question that the book of Job asks. The book is about a righteous sufferer, but not about the why, apart from the question that Job asks, which is God just? Even Job, when he asks why, is asking practical questions, not theoretical. What are the charges against me? Why doesn't God do justice in the world? The book of Job addresses the implications of righteous suffering rather than trying to explain it. Those implications are: how shall the upright man react in the face of undeserved and unexplained suffering? And what can one say about the justice of God in the face of undeserved and unexplained suffering? The arguments of the friends are also not about why, and it has often been observed by commentators that they fail as such, and that's because that is not their purpose. They are instead, in my belief, admonitions intended to convince Job to accept his suffering and turn to God. The arguments of Elihu also do not try to answer the problem of suffering. Rather, they are defense of God against Job's accusations. So why doesn't Yahweh address the question of justice within the human realm in any overt or concrete way? And it is possible that the world is so complex that one can basically find arguments for any position one wants. But in addition, Elihu's speeches have already set out all of the arguments for the justice of God at the personal level, the community level, and the cosmic level. These are either intended as part of God's response. That has been one suggestion of many commentators, so that what Elihu says plus what Yahweh says moves Job to change his stance. Or Elihu's arguments fail to convince because Job's arguments about the cosmos and the presence of injustice in the world are not the real issue. Job uses his knowledge in these areas to support his central thesis, which is God is unjust in his dealings with Job. Whatever arguments are presented to him, there remains the fact that in his own eyes he has been unjustly accused and punished, and it is this that is the basis of his lawsuit. He is not so much concerned about general suffering of the righteous, but he believes that in his own case he does not deserve it. But Job's point of view is not accurate. He, in fact, is innocent. God has asserted that right from the beginning. He is not being chastised or disciplined or corrected for any wrongdoing. He is being tested to see if his fear of God remains after all of the protection and reward he has been given is gone, or if his fear of God is after all conditional. Job's personal case cannot be addressed until he makes his choice. His choice is essentially the same as it was in chapter 2. Will he fear God and turn from evil, even though he has lost his possessions and his health, even though he doubts the justice of God? Only after Job has made his choice by confessing his lack of knowledge and relenting his adversarial stance does Yahweh vindicate him. By the way, it might be mentioned here that not every commentator thinks that Job in fact does relent. I think he does. But anyway, the way in which he does vindicate Job is a little bit vague. And Yahweh said to Eliphaz the Temanite, "My anger burns against you and against your two friends, for you have not spoken to me what is right like my servant Job." The question is, what has Job said that was right that the friends did not say? And numerous suggestions have been made. But perhaps it is that Job has confessed that he spoke about marvelous things without knowledge and without understanding. The friends have not. Job has chosen to remain in the fear of God without knowledge about the universe or God's justice, and without any assurance of his own restoration. It is only after Job has prayed for his friends, again demonstrating his obedience and fear of God, that his fortunes are restored. Now that Job is shown to be innocent, his family and friends come to comfort him. The fact that Job's possessions are restored, some have found confusing and even offensive. For many, the whole purpose of the dialogue is to undercut the idea that the righteous are rewarded and the wicked punishment. And yet, the epilogue seems to restore that connection. And even worse, how can Job possibly be compensated for the suffering he has endured? How can one replace sons and daughters? In my view, the restoration of Job's fortunes is a necessary part of the story, whatever we may make of it theologically. Job's continued sufferings in chapter 2 create a sense of non-resolution and an atmosphere in which Job has the potential of moving away from his stance of resignation and acceptance. As long as he remains in the state of suffering, there is that potential. In order for closure to occur, Job must be restored to his former state. as depicted in chapter 1, 1 through 5. The resolution may have implications for the question of Yahweh's justice in this particular instance of Job's suffering. Yahweh had allowed Job to be deprived of everything except his life in the interest of vindicating Job's character. To continue to deprive Job, when Yahweh is the one who caused the deprivation, would be cruel and perhaps unjust. The book may not intend to entirely overturn the idea that God punishes the wicked and rewards the righteous. It may only be arguing that because so much about God's work in the world remains unknown, the answer to the question of God's perceived justice cannot be the basis for service to God. In that case, it may still be entirely consistent for Yahweh to act as he does in the epilogue, after Job has chosen to serve God without the assurance of reward.